Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing: there's it's not the only way to sell, but if you're struggling and you've tried other methods, you might want to take a look at this one because it really breaks it down into small, bite-sized, step-by-steps that you can go, okay, I'm on step 3 and I keep failing. Why? I know step 3 is the right solution, so that means I'm either asking the wrong question or I'm asking it the wrong way. And then you can fix that and you go, okay, now I can move on to the next thing. And then you just start getting better and better and better. Next thing you know, you don't have time to make 100 dials a day because you're engaging with so many, you're getting more prospects to speak to you with less dials. Your talk time's going up, your pipeline's starting to fill, and you're happier.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Sales Enablement Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Paul. That was Michael Pedone. Michael's the founder of Sales Buzz, a training company that teaches sellers how to prospect and sell with confidence. And he's trained thousands of sellers how to successfully use cold outreach to engage with buyers. And in our conversation today, that's what we're talking about. Michael's specialty, cold outreach. We talk about why the tried and true methods still work. And Michael shares why he believes there is no modern or quote unquote new age way to get your prospect on the phone and qualify them to move forward. We dig into why he believes we need to redefine what success looks like for those in sales development and others on the front line of selling. We'll also dive into some tactics and talk about why sellers need to act with intent, which means being prepared with the questions you want to ask and understanding why you want to ask them. We also talk about some of the key metrics that sales development managers should really focus on. So we get into all this and much, much more. Before we get to Michael, I want to remind you to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So let's jump into it. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. As we were saying before we started recording, we hadn't met before, and I was really surprised given we were running somewhat the same circles.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so a pleasure to finally meet. And thank you also for joining me at such, we're telling people recording is, it's late on a Friday afternoon on Labor Day weekend, and it's very nice of you to join me to do this. So for people who aren't familiar with you, tell us what you do.
I show sales teams how to overcome call reluctance. And if you just want to make it short and sweet, basically most salespeople, they struggle. They don't know what to say after hello, my name is. And I have an online course that just breaks it down step by step. That'll give them the confidence they need where they can start making better calls right away. And
what I like about, among other things, about what you do is you're not so focused on, hey, selling to tech sellers. I mean, you sell to a wide range of industries.
It's every industry that's out there. I mean, that's just what people, a lot of times when they first come to me, like, well, what industry do you work in? I was like, listen, chances are I've helped people in the industry. I have over 86 different industries from people that bought from me. They all get the same
86,
training.
Okay. Like
86. Yeah. So when last time I ran a report, of all the companies that bought, there's, out of the thousands of them, there's about 80, it covers 86 different industries. They all got the same training. Nobody asked for their money back. So I'm assuming it's working. And, and why is that? Why does it work? It's because even though the problems that your solution solves might be unique to that individual, the way they buy and make decisions is the same across the board, no matter what it is.
Yeah, they're human beings.
Yes, and when you sell, I always say that selling is a lot like baseball. Every time you pick up the phone, you're in the batter's box. Mm-hmm. And I know everybody wants to hit a home run or hit a grand slam, but you have to get to first base first. Like even if you hit a double in baseball, you can't run from the home plate across the pitcher's mound the second, right? You got to go to first base first and then second. Right. Sales is a lot like that. And when you break the steps down of the actual sales call, of an objective-based sales call, and you explain what each step is and what you have to do to get a green light before you move to the next step, all of a sudden salespeople go, oh, I got it now. There's a game plan. I don't have to be a captain wing it. I don't have to have the gift of gab. I have to go, well, I have to accomplish this mini goal first. And once I do that, then I got to do something to get to the next goal and the next goal. And that's how I show them how to frame the sales call. And it just eliminates call reluctance. It increases sales engagement, gets more conversations going. And then they're picking up the phone more and they're having more conversations. And that's what I show them how to do. And it can work. It works in every industry. The steps are the same no matter what you sell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I know that you react to, and I think somewhat the same way I do, is that, people telling you, oh, Michael, everything's different now. Everything's changed.
Nope.
And people are still people.
Yeah. Well, I was just at a conference, we were talking offline beforehand, where I was in a speaking engagement, I was at a conference, and I asked everybody, okay, so this is step one that you have to do. We all agree that, like, yes. I go, okay, what do you do next? What's the next step? And I'm in a huge room, and, if I ask 10 people, if you ask the sales team, okay, what's the next step? You get 10 different answers, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened in there. It's like everybody thinks we have to do this or you have to do this. Everybody had a different reason. Or they goes, this depends. It depends on if it's this or this. I go, nope. The next step is still the same. We can get into examples so your listeners, if we want.
Give us an example.
So the first thing is this. So let's go back to the batter's box. Because for those of you that are listening to this and they might go, yeah, no, I don't think it is the same. I think it's going to depend. Let me just break it down to this. First of all, there's two types of calls. There's first-time calls and follow-up calls, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
First-time calls. First of all, a follow-up call is not, hey, I called them once, didn't get them, now I want to follow up with them. That I call that a first-time call number 2, first-time call number 3, okay?
Right.
The reason why I separate first-time calls and follow-up calls is the objectives are different. A follow-up call means I spoke to them, I didn't close them on the last thing, something had to happen in between, and now I have to have a different objective when I do a follow-up call, which we can explain later if we have time.
Right.
But let's take a first-time call.
Right.
First of all, you have to understand, if the prospect is not raising their hand, then it's a cold call. I don't care if it's an existing account, a client of yours, and you want to call and sell them something else. If they're not raising their hand, it's still cold because they weren't raising their hand. So let's just say we're
absolutely. And that's a critical point. I think people don't think about, because then they get lazy in their preparation because they have this level of assumption going into that call, and that is deadly.
It is, because then they're going to try to do the rapport building thing, like, hey, how's it going, right? And that other person, they don't have time for it. Even if you do that, you're still off base. Now, there's going to be some people that works for, right? That's their primary business, and they like that relationship type of thing. And listen, if you're hitting quota, you got commission checks falling out of your wallet, don't change. I'm okay with that, right?
Yeah,
but if you're struggling, what you're doing, it might be time for a change, right? So look at it this way. You're making a first-time call. I'm going to call it a cold call if they're not raising their hand. If I ask them, what's your objective? They're going to go, well, I want to make a sale, or I want to set the appointment, or I want to move it to the next step, or I want to, do a demo. None of those answers are correct. Those might be eventually what you want to do, but the first thing you have to do is within the first 15 seconds, you have to pique their interest. And they're like, okay, yeah. So now you have an objective. First time call, step 1, you have to pique their interest. If you can't pique their interest in the first 15 to 30 seconds of the call, nothing else matters. Because then if you don't pique their interest, you're going to get, no thanks, no understood, we're all set, no budget, whatever.
Right. You have to give them a reason to want to invest their time and attention in you.
That's right. And then when you see, we were talking again offline, we see these, what we would maybe consider not the best sales advice, where they give an opening like, hey, do you have 27 seconds to hear why I'm calling? I think that's a horrible way to pique interest, because even if they say, yes, okay, go ahead, what you just did as a sales rep is you just put yourself into a position to have to do a mini data dump. You just have 27 seconds to dump everything that you have just for them to go, sounds good, send me some information.
Well, the reason I don't like that approach is that the person now is looking at their watch.
Could be that too. So right. So, and again, so they're looking at their watch and all right, you're on the clock, go. You just put yourself in a bad spot.
Yes.
Right. If in the game of chess, it might not be an entire, there's different levels of mistakes, right? In chess, if you play chess, it's not necessarily a blunder, but it's close, right? A blunder is like you just exposed your queen, right? And they've taken it for, all right, I digress. I can get on that subject all day long. So let's go back to the steps.
I know. I've heard some of your videos where you like to use chess as an example. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to making an outbound, your first time call, you got to pique interest first. Well, how do you do that? Well, you have to have a what's in it for them value statement. So for example, let me give you a bad example of piquing. Let's say I'm calling a sales director. I did research. I built a list of sales directors. They meet my vertical. They meet my industry, location, whatever. And I call them and I go, hi, my name is Michael Pedone with Sales Buzz, and I provide sales training. Do you have a minute to hear why I'm calling, right? That's a bad opener. They're going to be like, no, thanks, no understood, we're all set. We already have an internal sales training. But I could do that same call and go, hi, my name is Michael Pedone with salesbuzz.com. The reason for my call, I specialize in helping outbound sales teams overcome call reluctance. Now, let me just stop right there. First of all, those pauses were by design because I wanted it to sink in when I go, so for the reason for my call is I help outbound sales teams. Now, it's a sales director. He manages and oversees a sales team. Now he wants to know, what does he help outbound sales teams do? And chances are they already have some type of internal training, or they're paying somebody else some training. And as long as they still have a problem with their current solution that I solved, which was call reluctance, they're going to want to hear what I have to say.
Right.
And you can take that type of formula. I don't care if you're selling logistics, SaaS, technology, right? Across the board, you take that same strategy, the words will change. I'm not saying you have one script for every industry. You have a playbook, but the words are different for every industry. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
So once you pique their interest, I got a green light, I'm on first base, right? They go, yeah, sure, I got a second, go ahead. They literally just gave me permission to ask them questions. Notice I didn't put myself in a position to do a data dump. You know, they just said, yeah, go ahead, I got a second. And now I can go, okay, great. Now, this is where I was at with the conference today. I go, okay, now, guys, within 15 seconds, you piqued their interest. What do you do next? And then you're getting all these different types of response. I'm like, none of that's correct. It's not the exact question I'm asking you for. I'm going, what is the purpose of the next step?
Right.
And a lot of people don't know. And I go, well, let me tell you what it is. The next step is you want to ask what I call an engagement question. So step one, I have to pique interest. Step two, actually, my first step has two mini steps: pique interest, gain permission. Right. So I didn't do the gain permission. Let me just do it real quick. So it would be like this. Let's say you're the sales director. Hey, Andy, it's Michael with salesbuzz.com. The reason for my call, I specialize in helping outbound sales teams overcome call reluctance. And if I caught you at a good time, I'd like to ask you a few questions just to see if what we have to offer might be of some help to you. Would that be okay? And I get like 90% of the people will go, yeah, sure, I got a second, go ahead. Right, because I got the right list, I got the right pain point, I say it the right way, I'm in the door, I'm on first base. I go, okay, great. So now we're done. I got to ask an engagement question. What does engagement question do? The engagement question's purpose is to put your prospect's attention in an area that you want them thinking about. I'm not trying to build rapport, right? That's a lot of times, I got to build that rapport things. When I sell by phone, I don't have that. The rapport building will happen naturally. It's not going to be a step.
Right.
So the next thing is I got to ask that engagement question. What does the engagement question do? It puts your prospect's attention in an area I want them thinking about. That's the objective of it. That's all I have to accomplish. So when they go, yeah, I got a second, I go, well, let me ask this. Your sales team, and I think I already know the answer, Andy, but are they handling inbound warm leads or are they doing outbound prospecting? Now, I don't care how they answer, but look what that question does. Again, we're giving my example of my industry, right? But it takes that prospect's attention, puts it on their sales team, which is all I need them thinking about, and I give them a this or that, and then I usually hear it's the first, it's the second, it's a combination, or it's none of those, it's this, and guess what we're having? We're having a sales conversation. Yep. Within 30 seconds, and then I have another step after that, after the engagement question. So I have these little mini steps all along the way, and in every industry, the questions will change, but the steps are the same. And they're in a logical sequential order, so it keeps the conversation flowing.
Well, and what you're doing as well, too, is as I said before, you're giving the buyer a reason to invest their time in you, right? With an expectation of getting a return on that time and investment of time and attention. Yeah. And to your point about rapport building is you're building that through how they're experiencing you, right? Because this is just the beginning.
That's right.
But you've got your foot in the door there because this initial experience is not clumsy. It's tailored. It's, there you have a good chance to make the decision whether it's worth their time or not. And that starts the rapport building.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing: it's not the only way to sell, but if you're struggling and you've tried other methods, you might want to take a look at this one because it really breaks it down into small, bite-sized, step-by-steps that you can go, okay, I'm on step 3 and I keep failing. Why? I know step 3 is the right solution, so that means I'm either asking the wrong question or I'm asking it the wrong way.
Right.
And then you can fix that, and you go, okay, now I can move on to the next thing. And then you just start getting better and better and better. Next thing you know, you don't have time to make 100 dials a day because you're engaging with so many. You're getting more prospects to speak to you with less dials. Your talk time's going up. Your pipeline's starting to fill, and you're happier.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the points I wanted to bring up is that there's no reason to be so slavishly committed to this idea that, you know, we can make 50 calls a day, dials a day, or 100 dials a day, or whatever that you see in so many organizations, and they just want everybody to do the same thing as opposed to, hey, look at Michael. Michael's crushing it with 20 dials a day.
I am a big believer, so I do have a metric on that. And I've said this for a lot, and it's because somebody that took me under their wing when I was early in my career taught me this, and it proved huge dividends. So he said, have a goal every day to have at least 60 dials a day and or 3 hours of talk time. He goes, Pedone, give me 3 hours of talk time. I don't care what you do with the other 5 hours of the day. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay. But he said 60 or 3 hours because there's going to be some days you're going to do 60 dials and you just don't get a hold of anybody.
You don't get a hold of anybody. That's fine.
Yeah, you got 45 minutes of talk time. You're just getting a hold of anybody. There's going to be other days you did 18 dials, but you got 4 hours of talk time, but it all averages out. But yes. If the problem is when somebody does 20 dials a day and they have 59 minutes of talk time, what did you do all day?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was researching. Well, then your time management skills need some improvement. You know, you can't be researching during calling time. The research should be done before it's calling time. You know, so you got to learn some time management blocking. I digress.
No, that not all. I mean, so getting back to sort of what got us down this particular path was this idea that somehow, you know, what you're doing and what you're teaching, you know, is different than it would have been 10 years ago or 20 years ago, or that somehow people are different or the situation's different. And in this case, I just don't think that's true.
It's not. So what's different is whatever they found a way to survive and maybe even thrive with the way they were doing it. The industries, you know, might have changed a little bit with the dynamics, and their formula no longer works. So they go, things have changed. But I think that's because they weren't using a solid strategy to begin with.
Right.
When it comes to their selling, they just found a way to make it work. They had inbound leads, maybe. It was low-hanging fruit. They didn't have to be that great. They didn't have to check all the boxes on the standard sales call. Mm-hmm. How many people get a hand raiser today and they don't even qualify? They just go right to the demo. I mean, it's insane. And then they find out after the demo they're not even speaking to a decision maker. They couldn't even afford it. It was an intern. You know what I mean? So it's just
all the things, right?
Exactly. So I think if everybody went back to basics, I'm talking like Wolf of Wall Street, phone room basics, which is the era I grew up in. You know, I've been selling by phone for a long time. You know, so I'm talking about if you get back to that, you know, how to sell by phone, you have to be really good at checking the boxes. It wasn't just about the gift of gab. It was like, okay, we have to do stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And once you learn how to do that, now it's just the volume. And when you get better at it, you don't have time to make $60 to $100 a day because you're getting too many conversations going. And then, like I said, you fill the pipeline, you're making more money, and everybody's happier.
Yeah, and then when you do that, is you make this a better job for people. Yeah. Right? I mean, when people have these skills, instead of, you know, SDRs being, I like to call it, used as cannon fodder, just to be thrown up there and make these, you know, hundreds of dials, is you start experiencing success in what you're doing. And the success builds confidence, and this confidence enables you to, do it in a way that becomes enjoyable, that's aligned with your skills and your strengths, which we talked about is not going to be the same as everybody else doing this. But yeah, that's okay.
But look what you just said, though. So they have the skills and the confidence. But again, if they just happen to get in that niche, in that lane where all the stars were aligned, right? They had the right type of leads coming in. The industry was good. The economy was good, whatever. And they're just crushing it. You know, when they go, well, things change because their numbers are down. Chances are the only thing that needs to, so something in their food chain, something disrupted their food chain, right? They need to learn how to hunt better. They need to know how to, instead of just waiting for that food to come and drop into their bucket, they got to learn how to go out there and get it now. And
Right.
I think so. So when somebody says, "Yeah, things change," yeah, probably your food supply chain might have changed a little bit in your industry, whatever, as far as that goes, but not the way people buy. You just need to sharpen your sales skills now, and get back on the phone, and don't be afraid of it, and forget about cold emailing. It's just it's ridiculous. I mean,
Well, it's interesting. I just somebody this week, I forget who it was. I was having a conversation earlier this week. Too many of these conversations, and some big, really big company. I want to say one of the major consulting firms, but I could be wrong about that. But some big company just announced internally that their sellers can no longer use email sequences.
no shit.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that? Am I allowed to say that here? That's
Yeah,
not,
okay. That was an authentic exclamation. That's fine.
yeah.
But think
That's
about
awesome.
that. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah. So there was a small window that the email sequences were working, right? Years back, but then it just got overpopulated. And now it was because there was a time when it was really rude to not respond to an email when somebody sent you, whether it was a sales rep or something.
Right.
And I think that had a lot to do with it. Like, hey, I got this email. Let me just respond. Hey, I'm not a good fit, or yeah, let's schedule a call, or whatever, right? And then what ended up happening is it just got overplayed, and now there's this thing called ghosting, right? I mean, so like it's carrying over. I think now they realize I'm about to get 10 more of these from this guy. I'm just going to keep ignoring it, right?
Well, it's migrated to LinkedIn as well. So yes.
Yeah. Yes. Unfortunately. So I will share this. I actually got a cold call the other day, and I hardly get them ever. It's been like more than a year since somebody cold called me, meaning somebody as an inbound, like prospecting me. They called me out of the blue, and I took a minute to hear what they had to say. And then I also said, you know what? I appreciate you calling. I'm not a candidate. I'm not a prospect for you. Here's why. And I don't see why it would be, so I would mark myself as disqualified on your. But I appreciate the call. And he was like, "Man, thank you for not blasting me. I thank you for taking the time to, I'm like, well, listen. I mean, I could fix what you said a little bit. That would have helped you, right? Because first of all, he didn't do any research on who I was, right? But, which was a first mistake. But either way, if you're going to come and offer me something, but with that being said, I still didn't need it. But what I posted on LinkedIn after I told people about that experience, I says, guys, that was a successful cold call for this person. Your job as a sales rep is not to close every lead you contact. Your job is to close as many qualified prospects as fast as possible. And yes, I pre-qualified as a suspect. There was a reason why I was a suspect and made it onto that list. Something has changed, and I'm no longer a qualified prospect for what they offer. But that sales rep should feel like, okay, good, mark them off my list permanently now, or put in drip marketing, whatever, and move on. There's nothing to feel wrong with that. And I think salespeople need to get back to that. You're not going to hit 1,000, you're not going to close every person you get a hold of.
Right. But the only thing about that call that you mentioned, though, is that the seller hadn't done any research.
Yeah. There were some things that they could have done better. We all could, right? I mean, there's a lot of people, no matter how long you've been doing this, you could do a little better. But that's a basic 101. He should have, before he called me, he should have known what I did. The most
violated one, at least in the calls I receive, or the cold outreach I receive, is mostly email and LinkedIn base.
I was just excited to get a cold call.
Well, yeah, I think they all get blocked on my phone by my spam blocker. But certainly no shortage coming in via email and LinkedIn. Yeah. But I got one today from somebody that this just drives me nuts. Is a pitch to be a guest on my podcast, on this podcast, and starts off by saying, I've been listening to a lot of your show. And he gives, first of all, you can tell from the beginning, it's automated, but he inserts the name of my original name of my podcast, which it hasn't been for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So first of all, someone claiming they're listening to that show, is just not right off the bat. But again, nonetheless, I knew it was automated, but it was just like, oh man, just take 2 seconds and just do a little research. I mean, who knows? I might have read the rest of the message.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. So, but everybody's looking for a quick, easy way, and I think the new SDRs, the ones that are coming in, you know, they would make more money going old school, and maybe their companies don't allow them to it, but
Well, but
um,
there,
uh,
we talked about this. There's a mythology about what technically what old school was, and I saw something a couple weeks ago on LinkedIn that just drives me crazy. As somebody was saying, "Oh, things are so different. This isn't like the '80s and '90s where it's all steak dinners and martinis." And I'm like, dude, it wasn't like that at all. What the hell are you talking about? I mean, there's this mythology about when it comes to cold calling, which is back 20, 30 years ago, prospects had nothing to do all day. They were sitting by the phone and answering their phone all the time. And it was easy to get a hold of them. And it was like, no. It's like, people have always been busy. A lot of people I was calling on C-level had admins. They had screeners.
Yes.
And you ever had an admin tear up the message that they said they were going to send the boss? Sometimes it happened in front of me. Sometimes when I was cold calling in person, I could hear them tearing it up as I walked away. It wasn't. Yes, you had to make. I'm not sure it's any harder today than it ever was. And it's still hard to get hold of people. But
sure, but you have to realize too, when somebody goes, well, it's harder today than it was. And I think I posted something like this because somebody was saying it was harder today than it's ever been. I'm like, really? Compared to what? Because when I got into when I got into sales, it was, there's a phone book, there's a phone, go call. I didn't have LinkedIn to research. I didn't have email. I didn't have the web I didn't have a website to go to see about them or anything. I didn't have tools that could run a report and send me all the leads in a certain location that match certain criteria or tech stacks, right? So I'm like, what are you talking about? It's harder today. At
that time there weren't even direct inward dialing.
Yes.
No one had. Everything went through a switchboard. So
that's right.
I know it's just hard. That's what I tell people. Stop making comparison. It's hard then. It's hard now. It's hard. It's hard work.
Just got to get better. Just got to get
better at it. To your point, and I have one of my favorite quotes from Ralph Waldo Emerson is, all life is an experiment. The more experiments you make, the better.
There you go.
And that's how you get better at things. So one question I wanted to ask is, because, you do work a lot outside of tech and a lot of tech in this audience, people listening, but what are the things you see that non-tech companies are doing that tech companies could learn from? Because there's always sort of this bias that, we're in tech sales, we're way more advanced than other industries in the way we do it. And I was just really curious, since you do so much work outside of tech and tech as well, but what could flow the other direction? Yeah,
so when I run those reports, like computer software, IT tech, they're my number one for sure, by far.
Sure.
Right. So, but then everything starts to marketing and advertising, transportation, logistics, it all scales down, right? But with that being said, I think it's the same either way. Sure, you might have different scenarios where you have a longer sales cycle, you have bigger dollars, things of that nature, but the steps are the same. 3M is my largest. I train every single sales rep that's in 3M in every country, because my course is in 12 different languages for them. I actually paid to have it in all these different languages. So, and they're selling millions of dollars, long sales cycles, new business and repeat business, right?
Right.
The sales process is the same for them as it is if I have a team, I have a company that comes to me, and no matter what industry they're in, and they have a shorter sales cycle, lower cost, and they only have 5 reps. They get the same training. One pays more, right, based on per head, but it's the same training. And I just think, yes, I'm sure there are some things that might be out there, if you want to call it maybe like advanced for certain industries. I'm like, great, let somebody else teach you that. But before you learn to run, you need to learn how to walk. And most people, whether they realize or not, they don't know how to walk in sales. And let me just teach you the basics, and then go back to basics. If you master the basics, you're going to make a lot more money. You're going to rise quickly. Yep. And earn more money. And then if you need to learn something else, fine. I had somebody come to me and says, well, I think we're looking for something a little bit more advanced. And I'm like, okay, so let me ask you, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Let me ask you a question. Your team though, are they at or above quota? Be honest with me now. Are they? He goes, no. I go, well, then they don't need advanced sales training. Well, they've been selling for a while. Okay, sales time in sales doesn't equal experience. You could be
Right.
selling for 20 years and not know what the hell you're doing, and
Yep.
you just survived, right? So so I think for me, advanced selling is when you're at like a peak level and you want to tune it to get to that next little bump to
Mm-hmm.
where like you're that unicorn. I think that's where advanced sales training, because if you're not there yet, then chances are the only way you get there is you have to know the basics and do them well, and you'll quickly rise and then go off and do something like that.
Well,
And that's
I
totally fine.
say you can't learn the basics too often, right? I think no matter what stage of your career in, it's always good to get a refresher course in the basics.
Yeah, and I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this when they listen to how I broke down the opening value statement. They've been selling for 5, 10 years, and they go,
Sure.
I never thought of it that way. And now I was like, okay, so now I have a little bit of a different game plan. I
Right.
execute. Next thing you know, they're setting more appointments.
Yep.
They're getting deeper into the call.
Well,
And
but
that's what
that's
it's all
the whole
about.
point about learning in sales is I believe it's you're learning new perspectives. That's really
Yeah.
what you want. A different perspective, right? Yes, you've been doing this for a long time, but you can always learn something new. Somebody's got a new perspective out there, a new point of view that could potentially help you. So, yeah, open your ears, try something, read a book, listen to a podcast, watch videos, subscribe to Michael's Tuesday tip newsletter, and then, yeah, put it into use.
Yeah, but, it's the people that do that though is the ones that really make the most. Every successful person was willing to invest in themselves. I've never met somebody that has reached a level of success that I'm after, right? And I'm trying to shoot for, and they got there just by falling into it. They didn't invest themselves or whatever in business. You have to be willing. If you're in sales, you're basically an entrepreneur in training. Like you're in business for
Yeah.
yourself if you're in sales.
Absolutely.
And when you go to that mindset, like some people say, like I go, well, do you have Sales Navigator for LinkedIn or whatever, right? And like, no, I don't want to pay. My company won't pay for it. I'm like, what's stopping you from paying for it yourself?
Right.
I can't do that. Like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
If you own your own business, well, there's risk. What if I don't get an ROI? I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, it works well enough for everybody else where it's a pretty safe bet if you use it right.
Right.
But what if you got to lose? Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
you just got to get past that mentality.
Well, unfortunately, it's fairly pervasive. And this thing you talked about, which it doesn't get, being in charge of your own business. It was very explicit when I started in sales. The people who hired me into the company I went to, which was a massive company, were saying, "Look, you're the CEO of your own territory. That's the thing that makes sales fun, right? You're the CEO of this little business. You take ownership. How do you want to make it happen? We'll support you." You don't hear that said as often to sellers, where they feel that same sense of ownership about their patch, whether it's a list of accounts or it's geographic or whatever business they're in. But you have to have that attitude. To your point, otherwise you won't invest. You'll think it's somebody else's job to invest in you, when it's your job to invest in you. Because you can say, well, I expect the company to invest in me, but it's like, okay, but you're not going to stay there 10 or 20 years. You're going to stay there 2 years, right? I think in sales, I saw a figure recently. By the time as an average salesperson, on average, when they reach age 48, they've had 12 jobs. So, yeah, you wonder why the company's not going crazy to invest in you. Is because we've reached this sort of Mexican standoff where the employees, sellers don't want to invest in themselves because I think the company should do it, but the company's not doing it because I think we invest in you and you're going to leave.
Yeah, well, so there's two things. One, the majority of my business comes from companies. So when I tell people they should invest, I don't want them to think I'm like trying to like self-promote, because I would go broke if I had to sell strictly to individual sales reps. It's so much harder to sell to, in my opinion, for something I'm offering, to sell to an individual is 10 times harder to get $1,000 out of somebody than it is for me to get $100,000 out of it's easier for me to get $100,000 out of a company because they know the value. Right. So with that being said, or $10,000 or $5,000, depending on the size of their company, right? So the point is that I'm more offering advice for sales reps that are listening to this, that are individuals. Is look, if you're working for a company that won't invest in you, with resources that you need, then give it your all, but keep looking. Right. Yeah. So I'm not about this quiet resignation thing where they do the bare minimum. I say, listen, while you're there, do everything you can to be successful, learn everything you can, but don't be that frog in the slow boiling water.
Right.
if you know that story, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, but with that being said, though, too, but don't be afraid to invest in yourself because you'll get an ROI. I mean,
Well, you're investing for your career. Your
yes,
career is not
exactly.
tied to that company. You're investing. It's
That's
just
right.
like building your network. When you're building your network, it's an asset you're building for your career, not for this company that you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and the whole quiet quitting thing. I mean, to me, been in sales and been in business as long as I've been as, I don't know, I read about it. It's like, oh yeah, most of the people you work with did that, right?
They've been quiet quitting for 20 years at the same place.
At the same place or from place to place. I mean, it's just, I don't think it's necessarily a new phenomenon. I think it's maybe people being more open about it, but nonetheless. So,
yeah.
Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Do you play guitar? I'm sitting behind you. You're listening to the audio, sitting behind Michael. So we're looking at each other. He's got several guitars mounted on the wall.
Yes,
do you play?
Yeah, I'm a bona fide 80s metal shredder.
Oh.
So yes, when I grew up, I wanted to be a rock star. And actually, right before I met my wife, I was waiting to hear back from Ozzy when he was looking for a new guitar player.
Whoa.
So I haven't played a lot in a long time, but it was my original passion, what I wanted to do, for sure.
And have you bitten the head off a chicken?
No. No.
Ozzy Osbourne joke for people maybe too young to appreciate that.
Yeah, they probably don't know it, but at least you and I get it. But yeah, no, I do love all types of music. But that 80s hard rock stuff is just, four on the floor. Let's go. That's what I love.
Yeah. 5150. Here we go. It's all right. Michael, been a pleasure to talk to you. Look forward to doing it again. If people want to be able to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Salesbuzz.com or LinkedIn, of course. Just look me up on LinkedIn.
Excellent. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, friends, that's it for this episode. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. As always, I'm so grateful for your support of the show. And I want to thank our guest, Michael Pedone, for sharing his insights with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast, Sales Enablement with Andy Paul, on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So thank you for your help with that. And thank you so much for investing your time with me today. Until next time, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.